This session is working with the child voice. Partially, I should say, it's just working with any old voice. It's not just for children. But I think we have to be careful because the language we use and what we ask of our children can shape them for the rest of their lives, either for the good or the bad. I don't know about you if you've encountered any people in your adult choirs, but my best tenor in my adult choir was not even going to ever sing in the adult choir because he said as an 8th grader, his choir director told him to mouth the word.
Oh, smack that person.
I mean, and we can say that, but we know it happens, and sometimes it can even be the look we give, like, why don't you get that right, or along the way. So I believe of all of our person, besides the heart which we protect like this, if we feel like our space is being invaded, the next thing that's most intimate to us is our voice, and in particular the singing voice, because it expresses what is on our mind, it expresses sometimes what is most dear to us, what we most love, and so it becomes a very personal thing. And then when we have to sing and let someone else hear it, boy, that's a real brave gesture for a young person to take. And so we're going to talk in more detail, but just to set the stage, allow it to happen in your classrooms, rather than force it along the way. And when you're working with very young children, I am very much opposed to always having the littlest children or the preschool children stand in front of the church and sing their piece. That can be the most detrimental experience ever for a child who, number one, is shy or an introvert in character, and we put them in the front and they're scared to death, literally some of them, and then we see in the congregation or in the audience, depending on the circumstance, two people talking to each other like this, or giggling, and they think it's about them. Do I look funny? Did I sing? They don't know. It has nothing necessarily to do. But I'm trying to get us into the mind of the young child, just to be aware. Sometimes I think we turn them into showpieces because it makes mom and dad feel good, grandpa and grandma feel good, rather than what is best for them along the way. And that is certainly true when we're working with them as singers. And the other thing is just to create an environment where all the voices are welcome, whether it's a great voice, whether it's an inexperienced voice, an experienced one. They're all welcome, and they can all learn from each other or help each other throughout their time together. For the first part of my career, I taught in a parochial school in Southern California for 8 years, and I had preschool in one building, and then I had K through 8 in the other building. And I saw the kids 4 days a week, which is unheard of. 2 days a week for general music, and 2 days a week for choir. And it seemed like for some kids, they would get it right away. But there was a 4th grade boy who loved to sing, but he couldn't find his voice, no matter what I did to help him along the way. And one day, by this time he's in the 4th grade, and I had him since he was a kindergartner, he sang on pitch for the first time, and the whole class applauded. Not because they were disgusted, they were just so happy for him, and the environment was created to welcome, even as a 4th grader, to find his voice. Many of those kids had done the same things, and they found theirs earlier on. But we don't know when the time is right. I shared a few weeks ago at Montreat, as part of our Hearts, Hands, and Voices Fine Arts, Worship and Fine Arts program, we, at one point in our career, went to a boys' home down the street, and literally an orphanage. And all of the boys in it were African American, and they had developed a bravado to protect themselves because they had either been abused by their parents, abandoned by their parents, or something had happened, in their communal life. And to break through the bravado was incredibly difficult. a 17-year-old boy started singing with me. And we were the only two that sang together. And he matched pitch, and all of a sudden, some of the younger boys saw that it was cool for an older boy to sing. And we had a trio. Then we had a quartet, and I just called it, and some of you heard the story the last session. First we have a duet, then we have a trio, then we have a quartet, a quintet. And we just kept building until all of the boys started singing. But we had to make it comfortable for them. And thank goodness for the leap of faith of that older boy who didn't care anymore. He had been around the block too many times for what people thought, and just did what was right for him. And he was a large boy, and he just sang his heart out. And that's what changed those other boys. And they started looking up to him as kind of a special big brother along the way. And so if we can create those kind of environments for the child voice, life will be good for them, I believe, for the rest of their literally life. So, just a couple things, some background and just some technical things. And I think we have to talk about it with our children. I mentioned a couple weeks ago, I think you need to talk about 3 things with your kids when it concerns their voice. Their power sources, their oscillator, and their interconnected resonators. And I know those sound like big words, but they love those words. It's like they can hardly say them at the beginning. But what are our power sources for singing? There are basically 3 of them that we focus on. Our abdomen or our back musculature. We're always talking about breathe from down below. Use those muscles down here. So to be aware of this and this in our person, and physically to point them, and you can direct them to it. You're not giving them all the details about this functions this way, this functions, that's not the point. But they just need to know that there are things that they can be aware of. The second thing is their rib cage. How is that rib cage lifted? Is it expanded? Or is it caved in because of the rest of our body posture? And the third thing are their lungs. And we have many different tools we can show those lungs with. Some people use balloons. I don't always have what I need. You can buy those little toys that open and close like this. You can show the breath. Sometimes all they need to do is simply just move themselves to show what would it look like if I'm going to breathe in air. It means I'm going to have more room inside, aren't I, for the air. And so we're opening up. And then if we're going to exhale that air, we can come together and push it out. So would you take a little experiment with me for right now? We're just going to start like this, and we're going to inhale through our nose. And now to exhale quickly, just for right now. I don't want you to. We do it this way rather than this way because we don't want the shoulders to go, or the shallow breath like this. And if you have some kids who are still raising the shoulders, let it come down and down from it. So let's do that one more time. And inhale. And now we're going to push it out with a hiss. And then let it blow out. Yeah, and when you run out of air, you run out of air. But it doesn't do any good to keep pushing here and the sound gets forced. If we think about all music is in motion all of the time, and we want the energy to be continuous. So inhaling like this, bringing it down, and then exhaling, and when we come together, and if we still have air left, it just kind of floats into the air to keep the buoyancy there. And to fight gravity from having us cave in down here. You can do this with your adults too, and your children will teach it to your adults along the way. So 3 things, those muscles here and here, your rib cage, where that's going to be, and your lungs, and how do you fill them up. Your oscillator, that's your vocal folds, or your vocal cords, those things that we have to set in motion to make things go. I sometimes use rubber bands, and I get a thick rubber band, and I get a thin rubber band. And some of us, when we're younger, we have the very thin rubber band type vocal cords, and if we were to stretch those and actually snap them, they'll make a light pinging sound. But if we get the thicker ones, that particularly as boys grow older and their voice starts to change, the vocal cords get thicker, and as we snap those, they make a lower kind of pitch. But it takes more energy to snap one of those thicker rubber bands. The same thing is true when we're singing them as a young guy. And then the fun one, the interconnected resonators. And maybe you can forget the word interconnected, but the first one is just the region above your voice box, and it's inside, okay, to be reminded of. The second one is your oral cavity, your mouth, okay? And the third one is your nasal cavity. So we're kind of like here, here, and here for the different chambers. And different kinds of sounds will ask us to have the resonating going on in different places along the way. If, for example, if we wanted to start sensing things in a different way, we could just simply speak, and you could touch here, you could speak and touch here, and not a whole lot, or you could speak and touch here. Now, when you're normally speaking, you're going to feel the resonance mostly here. You can feel those vibrations with your hands. I think that's really important to do. When we are singing, oh, that changes because it's going up a little bit higher. We don't feel quite the same resonance. But we can also feel then where we want those resonating chambers to be happening. So, for example, if you just want them to sense things, would you sing for me, like an NG? Go. And you can feel the little buzz going on there. Simple for us, big deal for the kids, so that they can feel where that sound is going. If you want them to start filling up their oral cavity or the mouth region, the best thing I can do for that is to suggest singing on a hum. And that sounds kind of strange, but to do that hum, we're going to put the tip of our tongue to the tip of our lower teeth like this, and then we're going to close our mouth, and we're going to hum with that position inside, as opposed to would you go for it? And add another element to it. You're going to have one of your hands is going to be the rock of Gibraltar, or your foundation. You're going to take the other hand for that hum, and you're going to just keep pulling the hum right out. Right, here we go. Hear the energy that is going through that, and it actually causes more resonance to happen because your body or your eyes are seeing movement, and they're suggesting this is not going to be a stagnant thing or a one-time thing. A great conductor, and some of you might know him, Rodney Eichenberger. He used to conduct the University of Southern California chamber singers, and then he ended up going to Florida. But one of his big things is that we need to actualize through kinesthetic movement what things feel like and look like as we're doing them. Then we'll remember them, and we'll have a better sense to apply them to the thing down the road. The other thing is, we talked in the first session about the 4 kinds of voices we have, and I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. I've printed them out there for you, the playground, the whisper, the speaking, and the singing voice. But we also talked about using language that might work better for young children, using the light mechanism and the heavy mechanism as opposed to the chest voice and the head voice. The concepts of something weighing more and something weighing less for light and heavy resonate more than children with than a chest or a head voice. But I think what we need to realize is that, and be able to articulate with our kids so that they can apply it. We'll do some singing in a bit. How is singing different from speaking? Well, it requires more physical energy to get those vocal cords oscillating along the way. It requires more breath support. It requires more motor control. Yeah, you can't use all of the breath at once. And fourth, it requires more focus. That's a whole lot more than we ask them to do with speaking. And look how much time we've given them to practice speaking. from their birth on, they're learning words. We're teaching them words. So they practice. If we're lucky, some parents still sing to their children and get it that way, but many of them don't. Some of our children will come and singing in church or singing in school or in a choir will be their first connection with their voice. That's very different from the past. But ultimately, the kids need to know that my singing voice is the strongest voice I have. And when I can't speak anymore, I'll still be able to sing. It's going to keep carrying me through because of all of those things that we've worked on. And that if we had to divide things up in our understanding of our voice for the intelligence, we have musical intelligence and textual intelligence when we sing. The musical intelligence I put into the category of, those are the vowels we sing. They make the beauty of the musical expression. The consonant sounds give those vowels intelligence. It means, now we know what the words mean. I could sing, O, E, A, O. Doesn't mean anything, but if I put the consonant sounds in between. But we have to be aware that there are those components. Sounds simple to us because we were taught to do it somewhere along the line. But if we don't take the time to do it with our children, we don't have that automatically along the way. So we learned a little chant last session. Oh, shoot me. And it went like this. Lift up your voice and sing. Rise, children, gonna praise the Lord. And there's this sentence, rise, children, gonna praise the Lord, that keeps happening over and over. Let's use that as one of our vocal examples in working with the things we've been talking about. So, just for the sake of speed, just be my echo for that sentence. Rise, children, gonna praise the Lord.
Rise, children, gonna praise the Lord.
Add the element of your eyes to it, and
rise, children, gonna praise the Lord.
I would add the element of your posture to it, okay? And for your posture, we all came forward on our chairs, good. Now, I want to ask another thing of you. Instead of just coming forward on your chairs, would you make sure that your feet are being centered in front of you, but that your heels are touching and your toes, not just one or the other. Because as soon as one or the other are touching, you are not in the best support balance for it, okay? Rise, children, gonna praise the Lord.
Rise, children, gonna praise the Lord.
Now, would you add this to it? Could you take your hand, one being your anchor, rise, and just let the ah flow out of it? Ready? And
rise, children, gonna praise the Lord.
you got more energy behind it by doing the gesture. Now, could you get it lifted so it could be in tune at the top? Rise, and we're just going to take our hand and cup it and kind of simulate what's going inside our mouth. Rise, that's our placement. Ah could be rise, rise. It could be in there. So, rise, it's just at the top of it. Ready?
Rise, children, gonna praise the Lord.
That was a little thing, but that was an exquisite sound, and it was in tune, and you didn't dwell on the R forever and ever, and just lifted. So every time we sing that repeated sentence, would you do the gesture and keep your posture? Lift up your voice and sing.
Rise, children, gonna praise the Lord.
Now let's work on that consonant at the end. What's the big consonant at the end? The D sound. Okay, some people say sing with a shadow vowel. It means you're going to put an D at the end. I prefer less of a shadow vowel than just a lighter sound. Just going to touch it. But we have to have a place where it's going to land. So after you've done this for rise, hold out your hand and you're going to catch the D of Lord at the end. Ready, here we go. Lift up your voice and sing.
Rise, children, gonna praise the Lord.
Ooh, and they were all together, and you heard it along the way. Now, if it gets too heavy, turn your hand like this and let the D float into the air. Ready? And oops, I was going to give you this. I got to sing my part first. Lift up your voice and sing.
Rise, children, gonna praise the Lord.
It's light, but it's there. Now, if you need other things along the way, I'm a firm believer in conducting vowel sounds. Some of you, I know you were there. If you saw me conduct the children's choir at Montreater and even in my home church, the pattern is there, but then when I need the vowels are being shaped along the way. But all of that is being done in rehearsal also. The children are shaping those vowels with us, so that it would be silly for them to be shaping them, you know, in the context of worship or a concert. But I can shape them as a reminder of what they have done. We learned a little piece. It's a Georgia C chanty, and it's yonder come day, day is a breaking, yonder come day, oh my soul. Yonder come day, day is a breaking, sun is a rising in my soul. And what we had to do along the way, because there are 3 parts and they're all going to happen at the same time ultimately, we figured out what gestures would be the best for each of the 3 parts. And so for that one, we were working to get style, and I gave them permission to do some scooping along the way and sliding. And we ended up doing something like this. Yonder come day, day. And they just kind of did this little dip like this. And all of a sudden, they took out the breath, which we didn't want there in the first place. Yonder come day, day is a breaking. Yonder come day, oh my soul. Yonder come day, day is a breaking. Sun is a rising in my soul. And it was a big deal for us to get the O in front of in my soul, because we like to put the L on too soon. Soul, soul. And because we wanted a little bit of a different accent, it was not in my soul, but in my soul along the way. Now I know it's kind of fast for us to do, but if you'll be my echo for right now, so you can have the experience of trying different gestures while you sing. Yonder come day, day is a breaking.
Yonder come day, day is a breaking.
Yeah, and all of a sudden when you start doing this, you know, you can put a little lean into it too, because then I'll put the accent there. Ready? Here we go.
Yonder come day, day is a breaking.
Yonder come day, oh my soul. Oh, I can't do it that way. I can't. Okay, you got the idea, okay? Put it together, and if you can't do all the words, just do the gestures with me, just to feel it. Ready? Here we go.
Yonder come day, day is a breaking. Yonder come day, oh my soul. Yonder come day, day is a breaking. Sun is a rising in my soul.
Can you do this? In my soul.
In my soul.
And hear how that can kind of expand and blossom just by doing the gesture, okay? They added a second part to that. It was the little ostinato. Yonder come day, yonder come day, yonder come day, oh my soul. Yonder come day, yonder come day, yonder come day in my soul. That had to go up. Okay, so there are 6 yonder come days in there. The middle one is, oh, I'm slow, so, oh my soul. The last one is, in my soul, so, do. Here we go, putting it all together, and
Yonder come day, yonder come day, yonder come day, oh my soul. Yonder come day, yonder come day, yonder come day, in my soul.
And I deliberately wrote, oh my soul and in my soul. So, oh my soul was always for so. And in my soul was for so. Do it again so they could keep track of that along the way. The other part they had to sing went up to a high E flat, okay? And it's like, yonder. And so we did what was called crocodile mouths, okay? So crocodiles are going to start with their teeth together like this. And every time we want to have the big ah, open, tall vowel sound, we're going to open up like this. So they did, yonder, 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 oh my soul, yonder, 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 in my soul. And I didn't expect you to do all of that. But all of those gestures then had meaning for them, and they weren't done to choreograph the song, but they were done to help them suggest what they're going to do with their voice and supporting the voice and how they're going to shape the vowels. And it was interesting to me, when they got to that yonder part, they just sailed that high E flat out into an auditorium of 1,000, and it just sailed clear through the whole building. But they knew what to do with their mouth. I could say, drop your jaws and do this, and I did kind of distorted things. But as soon as I did this, they were in their crocodile world. Chop, chop, chop along the way. And then we had a deal every once in a while, and this came from some of my college students. They call me Dr. B, and that's what my kids at the church do also. But then the comes and says, you know what, but Dr. Picky comes out quite a bit in the rehearsal. So I use that now all the time, and I'll just say, oh, friends, Dr. Picky has just let me know that this wasn't good enough, And so you can have it be a double personality in your classroom. But then it becomes like, one kid said to me at the end of it, so, well, what did Dr. Picky have to say about that? And it's like, so they're kind of, they're engaged, they're thinking through it. And you're entering their world rather than having them always enter your world as an adult. Does that mean we're going to be childish with them? No, we're going to be childlike. And I think there's a big difference in those two concepts. So, anyway, just some ideas for working with that. And then, how are you going to establish foundations for singing in a world where some kids get it, others don't have any experience, and some might get it if they're lucky in their school system. When I moved to Michigan 9 years ago to start this fine arts program for Southeast Michigan, it was located in a church, and I met all the kids, and so I started some informal singing experiences with them at the church. None of them could match pitch. And they, the range was 2nd grade through 7th grade. And then I went, I thought, well, I went to all of their concerts for the first year to see what was going on in the school system. I understood why they couldn't match pitch. And it was not necessarily the school system's fault or the kids' fault, but because of funding in our state and because of the arts not getting the necessary both funding support but also people support to do it. They were lucky in some instances that a CD would be put on by the classroom teacher, and that would be their music experience for the week. Others actually sang with the CDs, groveling, very low-pitched songs in the concert.
Oh.
And we cringe at all of that, but that was their circumstance given a bigger circumstance in our state of Michigan. So the first thing I had to do is find out a way, how are we going to even get them to match pitch, that it's important? Well, along the way, every Monday night when we meet for our program, we have a dinner time. It's 15 minutes. And then I sit at all the tables, and I try to talk to at least every kid within a month, going from table to table. And one is, the big question I was asked is, well, what specials did you have today? Because in school, at least in our system, specials are art, computer, music, physical education. And one of the boys said, well, our special today was music, but it's not real music. And I thought, oh. I said, well, what does that mean? And he said, well, our teacher just puts the CD on. Real music is when we get to do it. That's my definition of music. It's when we get to do it, because in that case, somebody else was doing it for us, and it wasn't engaging them. They weren't participating. They were asked to listen to it. Are those experiences good? Yes. Are they the end all? No. They don't really make musicians out of all of us. So, as I'm thinking about this whole awareness of singing, I think sometimes maybe we have to approach listening to things in our environment. one of the assignments I give to my kids, on your way home tonight in the car, there's a piece of paper. I want you to write down every sound that you hear along the way. Do you know how much we tune out in our world and just to focus on, and all of a sudden, their lists are incredibly long. Screeching tires, babies crying, or whatever along the way. But we don't always hear all of that because we've been trained, just to focus on certain things. Just to have them become aware of their environment. Or in your classroom experience, to sing a melody like 4 times for them, the same melody. And the first time, have them listen with their eyes open. Second time, listen with your eyes closed. If I were to sing this melody with your eyes open, come let us eat, for now the feast is spread. Now close your eyes and see if there's something different that will happen. I don't know. Come let us eat, for now the feast is spread. For some people, turning off the lights allows them to listen better. Or they can hear the meaning of the words as opposed to just the words being sung. Or they don't see me, the teacher, in front of them, which is a good thing. They just hear a voice singing to them. And to be able to have them to describe it, and maybe ultimately they do that for the rest of your choir. They sing a melody 4 times, and one time eyes are open, one time they're closed. One time the choir is standing, one time the choir is sitting, one time the choir is walking around. All of a sudden you wouldn't believe what they're hearing, or what we are even ourselves might be hearing along the way. And it helps us then to figure out where are they in this journey of finding their voice, and what do they hear? Because if they can't hear a melody, there's no way they're going to be able to sing one along the way. I alluded to in the first session that we have those 4 main voices, but we also have a 5th voice, and we call that our inner voice. We label it as inner hearing or audiation. And I think we have to work more with that voice to help our kids in establishing foundations for their singing. So one way in which you might do it, if you're accustomed to doing some kind of welcome song with a group as they're singing, and we did one last session called Body, Mind, Spirit, Voice from Helen Kemp. We're just going to sing it right now. It goes like this. Body, mind, spirit, voice. It takes the whole person to sing and rejoice. Right, here we go.
Body, mind, spirit, voice. It takes the whole person to sing and rejoice.
We've been working with that for a little while. They've kind of warmed with their voices. I would say, be my echo, please, with your voice. So me, so me.
So me, so me.
So me, do.
So me, do.
Do, re, mi.
Do, re, mi.
Mi, so.
Mi, so.
So, la, so.
So,
So, fa, mi, re, do, do.
So, fa, mi, re, do.
I want you to sing the patterns back to me with your hands and voices, but my voice won't sing the whole pattern before you respond. Listening first, it sounds like this. So, your turn.
So me, so me.
So, me.
So me, do.
Go.
Do, re, mi.
Me.
Mi, so.
So.
So,
So.
So, fa, mi, re, do.
And all of a sudden, this is their notation, isn't it? And they're having to hear the melody for that notation in their head. Now that's very simple, but as you do it more often, you choose things from your anthems that you are going to do. And already you're giving them sight reading tools then for singing of the piece. You can also see and listen to those children in your room to see who's actually getting it and making a connection, with the movement and with matching pitch along the way. Sometimes it's nice to have the scale represented. I sometimes make in my classroom a solfege ladder, and it has steps, and it looks like this, along the way. Here's Do, Re, Mi, Fa, so that we can actually climb the ladder or the steps and sing the scale. But sometimes it's fun to have a human scale along the way. And so if I were doing that, I would try to choose kids by their height, so that low Do is a little shorter than high Do up here. And then I simply place my hands above their head and sing the people that you see in front of you. And if in doubt, for first experience, they just all hold up who they are so that the people can see it. And it's amazing when a live human being gets up in front of them, as opposed to my ladder on the board, how much more they are engaged, because now it's like real. There's a person up here. And it's fun, you can Do, Re, Mi, Re, Do, 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 So, Do, and just doing it with you. And they don't want to be outsmarted by you. That's another way for them to engage their mind or brain with you in the process. Let's see. I'm just kind of throwing out a lot of things and going through my list here.
Sir, can I ask,
Yes.
I'm sorry to ask a question. You said the four things main difference in singing and talking was more energy, more breath control, more motor control, and
Focus.
focus.
And in relationship to that question, think about what has to be focused for the singing. All of those above things, but also it's a real intentionality, isn't it, to get the right notes at the right time, up, down, stay the same, whatever. And so a lot more thinking, higher level of thinking going on. The other thing, and in relationship to that with the focus element then, is how many ways can you speak the same sentence, okay? To help those kids who are not matching pitch along the way, or are having some trouble, to find ways just in their speaking voice. For example, if we chose a sentence like, I can't believe he ate the whole thing, okay? I can't believe he ate the whole thing. I can't believe he ate the whole thing. And have them imitate you, just see if they can hear differences in their speech. Or let them choose a sentence and figure out how many different ways they can speak it to you. And then maybe, how would you say that sentence? If you had the choice to. I can't believe he ate the whole thing, and they can make up, well, whatever they make up is right along the way. All of those different kinds of experience of exploring the voice, the warm-ups, the use of gesture and all of that, helps you to determine, are they getting it, number one. It helps them to get it, we hope. But if they're not, then to not put them into a category, oh, that's my monotone group. Or those are my non-singers, and these are my singers. I'll have them do the speech part in this piece, and I'll have them do the singing part.
That's the drummers.
That's the drummers, yeah. But rather, through all of those kinds of experiences, look at them and say, what is going on? What kind of singers are they? And I put it's at the back of your, one of the last pages of your handout there, it's called Undeveloped Singers, Underdeveloped Singers. You see what that is in your handout? And I'd like for us to talk about that, because there are different ways we can help different needs of singers. For example, if you have a speech-like singer, obviously they're going to sing like they speak, just like I'm right now. Come, let us eat, for now the feast is spread, might come on. I think they need tons of vocal experimentation. That inflection thing we were talking about. They need to start being able to discriminate. Oh yes, this is my singing voice. This is my speaking voice. You need to help them articulate that. But the biggest thing, probably, they need to learn how to coordinate the ear and the voice. They haven't heard things, or they can't make a connection between what they're hearing and what comes out. What are some possible remedies for it? You've probably done many of these: sirens, goblins, machines, animals. I would add 2 more to it. I call it magic strings and a maze. And created this thing with, it started out in my 2nd grade, teaching that each child is given a special gift of magic strings. And a big deal, and I put all of them in their hand, and then I would close their hands up, and then oh, it fell on the floor, you know, the whole bit to me. And the magic strings would come out at certain times in the rehearsal, and they might just wiggle our voices along the way. And so we would go, ooh, and then we would do, ooh, you know, just get them. And we'd experiment with whatever was going on, and then magic strings would automatically go home with us somehow. And I forgot to tell them how they'd come back to school, but I learned my lesson. They automatically know what shoes you're going to wear the next day, and they come in the shoes back to class. And then it would be kind of, pull out your magic strings and experiment. And all of a sudden, the magic strings started singing along the way. They're not worried about what this, they're engaged in the world of pretend, which is their play world right now. And all of a sudden, they're starting to do what you would like them to do. Another fun thing to do, I put the magic strings on the back page, just some shoes as a reminder of those magic strings. But underneath that, for vocal experimentation, I put the maze. And I have a great big chart. And it's our first chance music that we do. And we start at the bottom, and you can, if you're tracing and looking at your page there, we're starting with the E vowel, just simply in a low register of our voice, neither singing or truly speaking, but and then we go all the way, and then we end up with woo, you know, going out the door. And they're busy either watching you trace it or give them one and let them trace along the way. And if you give them their own copy to trace, they're all moving at different times. So what an exciting chance piece you're getting. But they're experimenting with their voice and the different vowel sounds that they can make and the different registers that they can make them in. Backing up then, the second kind of singer, as we're looking at those singers that are having issues, we might call a dependent singer. And they cannot sing without other singers or an accompaniment. And you know what? I think we directors have to take ownership for that one, because some of us love to have that keyboard in front of us because it's our comfort zone along the way. The children can't attack us, no, I don't. But it provides us a certain safety, and somebody says, oh, I can teach them the notes much faster. Ultimately, it becomes a total crutch for them, and we have to figure out a way. How can I get them to sing independently and still then bring in the piano as an accompanying instrument rather than as the one who does all of the banging out, you know, of the melody? When I think for most beginning teachers, we start with that piano in front of us because it's our protection. It was for me anyway in my choir rehearsal. And then my cooperating teacher said, take the piano away. I can accompany with the auto harp. I'm naked in front of my kids, you know, because there's nothing, you know, there. But it depended on my voice. And now, when we rehearse, my accompanist say, you're the easiest conductor I've ever worked with. We hardly play at all during rehearsal. But we have to pay attention because we never know when you want something from us along the way. But I think the more you can do without any instrument coming in is going to be the most helpful thing you can do. At first we think it's going to take us twice as long to learn that piece. ultimately not, if you get it, into your routine, then do bring in the accompanying instruments so that they can hear them with fresh ears and how their part fits with an accompaniment rather than not how, oh, here's the accompaniment, oh, I have to add this to it. Rather, we're adding the accompaniment to the primary thing of the voice. So it's kind of an opposite approach. The other thing you can do, what we try to do is, if you learn the melody or the anthem, and you've learned it without the aid of an instrument, then add a piano version of it. Then add a percussion accompaniment to it, if you do the drumming thing. Then add a handbell accompaniment to it. But we start always with the choral or the vocal sound rather than the instrumental sound, and then add it to it. So for the person who's dependent, I think more solo singing. Do take time, just in your rehearsal to have them echo you one-on-one. And I don't make a big deal about it, but if we're doing a warm-up and just say, so me, and then just walk to you, and I'll just point, along the way. And I just, even if it's not right for the first times, I just walk on by because I want everybody to feel like it's just part of our routine to do it. And then, as you are listening to them, you might determine that some of them will go, so me, oh, there's a speechless here. Some will go, you've sung, so me, and they'll do, so me. Good news is, they hear the intervals that you want them to sing, but they just are not hearing it at the level that you're singing. So one strategy for that is, take it where they're singing it, and say, okay, sing that back to me again. This so me, and then I'll sing so me exactly where they were. Have you ever considered trying it here? So me, and just walking up half steps from where they were, not jumping up to where you want it to be, but see if they can do it. And basically, most of them will go for it. They're just not using enough air often, and if you can just take them up incrementally, they'll do it with you. Now, some may not be able to do it with you because they may need some other experiences, but allow that solo time, and just, if it becomes normal just to do the solo singing and just say, oh, let's try it here, or let's do this here, it's not an embarrassment for the kids, but it's rather part of the fabric, the organic makeup of your group. Let's see. So there's two other singers. The limited range singer is often comfortable in singing what we call the chest voice or the heavy voice, and does not know what it sounds like. For those kinds of things, I think you have a couple options. Number one, get music that's written higher into the, sometimes we choose what is comfortable for us to sing rather than what is the best range for a child to sing. Another thing might be to have them listen to someone else sing it other than you, who's a good vocal model. I know that I can only teach my kids to sing up to a high D flat, an octave, a note above C in my falsetto. If I need to go higher, I have to bring in a really good child singer or an adult female who can make the kind of sound I want there. So recognize your own limitations, in how you're going to address their range. Excuse me. The other thing for that is just to give them time again to have experiences in which you let them sing with what I call sloppy breath or lazy. And now, what would it sound like if we all sat up or if we all did this? And just to do the contrast thing so they can have something to compare to. Another thing to do might be to have them cup their ears while they are singing. And if you have to sing right now, rise, children, go to praise the Lord. Would you sing that phrase and just put your hands over your ears like this? And
rise, children, go to praise the Lord.
And it can be quite echoey, like a big chamber for them. And some will have never heard their own voice say, that's not me singing, because they don't know that that's what it sounds like. And for those kids who have trouble distinguishing that they're really singing in their choir, sometimes they will be the ones who you call your out-of-tuners, or they sing, the more like they speak. I have found, and it doesn't work all the time, but for a lot of the time it does, is to put those singers at the end of the row. So they have one ear free, no one singing in it, and they have someone singing the other. And they're less in competition then, because they can have more freedom to hear their own voice. And the other thing for that is I do not put them next to the strongest singer, thinking that if they're really next to a strong singer, they'll get it sooner. I actually put a softer singer next to them so they don't feel like they're in competition. One who is singing accurately, but not as a leader. And all of a sudden, they tend to be less in competition. They find their voice because they can hear it along the way. So you might experiment with things like that. Sometimes when you're trying to work with the whole idea of range, don't just practice whatever they're doing to the top note of the piece. Go at least 3 or 4 notes higher in singing the piece along the way. We just did Jody Lynn's "Lift Up Your Heads, O Ye Gates," and it ends with da, da, it goes up to a high F at the end. Well, it sounded pretty pathetic when we first started doing it. He said, "Oh, that's nothing. C sharp to F sharp, D up to G." They sang a high B flat. Then they came down to that and they said, "Oh, this is nothing along the way." But, just give them the challenge. Can you do this? Can you do this? What's going to take more air, more breath? Yes, I can do all of this. And when it came time to do it in the concert, it was there because it wasn't the highest note anymore. It wasn't the top of their range. It was just part of their range. The same thing is true at the bottom. And sometimes we forget about the bottom. It's like, oh, don't let your kids sing lower than a C or a B flat. But there are songs in church in our hymnal that actually go to a B flat or lower. But you know what? They're there. So how do we sing those beautifully? And I would start by pitching the song higher and then moving it down, because then we have the pitch feeling in our head from the light vocal mechanism, bringing it down into the lower register along the way. I know it's a lot of technical stuff, but I wanted to share just ideas of what to do, because we have all of these kinds of singers in our program. The untuned singer is the one who cannot match pitch, but can sing in some limited range, and it kind of reflects back to the previous one. What I'd like for you to do, let's see what your ear is like and what your memory is like. So for a quick experience, I'm going to sing a melody, and there is one part of the melody that keeps coming back. And I'm going to give you even a little help today. Here's one of the melodies. Amen, amen. Here's the other melody. Amen. Okay? So, here are the 2 choices. I need you to decide which melody is repeated several times and which one comes first. Amen, 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 amen. Melody that came first? This one. How many times?
3.
3, okay. Ready, would you sing for me?
Amen, 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 amen.
You're in charge of these 2 melodies in a minute. Okay, just hang on to those. Okay, how about another melody with me? 2 melodies, and they look, I got it right. They look like this. Tell me which one is repeated and what the order should be. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Melody that's first, one on this side. And how many times is it repeated?
3.
Go for it, ready, here we go.
Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah.
on up, and would you come on up? Oops, I'm losing my scale. All right. So, on this side, she's your teacher for right now, all right? And she's your teacher on this side. Let me hear what you're going to do on this side. Ready? Amen. 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 Over here, what are you going to sing like? Ready? Hallelujah. 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 Come together both at the same time. You started here. You started here on the fifth. Ready? And go. Hallelujah. 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 I'm coming along. I'm going to walk up and down your rows. I'd like you to sing the part I'm singing, but you stay with the part your teachers are singing. Okay, ready? Here we go. Amen. Hallelujah. There's your first three-part a cappella piece with the choir based on patterns. But they were taught simply by having the children discern the form of it. And as we were working more with, one of my kids said, why are we singing amen instead of amen? Because sometimes, that's an opportunity to talk about language and culture and how it shapes the pronunciation that we do. And then we would work with some vowels on hallelujah, the puckered lip there, ha, that crocodile mouth, and la comes right here in your front cheeks, and lu is like saying A-OK. Hallelujah. And it becomes a beautiful song. I have to let you go. Thank you so much for listening.